Hello everyone, I'm Jane and welcome to my channel. Today I want to talk a little bit about the recruitment process and the job interview process. I don't think it's a secret that it's really hard to find a job within the museum and heritage sector and the cultural sector generally. Quite often you will find yourself hunting for jobs many times over during your career in this sector. And one of the reasons for that is because museums especially are very good at doing these time-limited contracts. So you'll be having maybe 18 months at this organization, maybe a year there, 2 years there, maybe you're doing a maternity cover for a while, etc., etc. So you'll be constantly looking for jobs, and that can be very stressful. It's very hard because it's very insecure. You never really know when you have a regular salary. And usually a recruitment process, of course, is all about looking for the right candidate, and all the spotlight is on you as a candidate, really. But if you know what to look for, there are actually quite a lot of hidden clues within the process that can tell you a lot about the employer as well, and the organization, and what it's like to work for them. I've been through a lot of job interviews in my time, and I've also been part of lots of interview panels. So I kind of know the process from both sides of the table, and it can be really hard. One of the consequences is that employers basically can pick and choose between a lot of really good and well qualified candidates, and let's be honest, it has made some of them a little lazy. They don't really have to make much of an effort. They don't really have to try very hard in this process, because they can basically pick and choose whoever they like. But it also reveals quite a lot about them, and quite a lot about how they go about the process here. Now, sometimes you can't really do an awful lot about these points apart from observing them, and sometimes you have to say yes to a job even though you might not quite have the right gut feeling about it. But at least you will know a little bit more about what you say yes to if you look out for some of these clues, and it might make you feel better equipped and better prepared for what is coming. So these are 7 points that I have observed in my job hunt that I hope might be helpful and might be useful for you as well. So let's dive into it. The first thing to look out for is in the actual job advert. Observe the words in the advert. Is this a standard job advert, or have they actually made an effort to create a special description and think about what it is they really need within the team and within the organization? After just a few job applications, you become an expert in spotting this, really. And so have a look at, have they actually made an effort to describe this particular role and what it is it's meant to do and how it fit in? Or is this a sort of standard application? If they have made an effort, take advantage of the word. If they use a specific rhetoric or phrases, reuse them in your application, because it makes it easier for them to actually see that you are a good match for them. The second point to look out for is when you arrive at the job interview. Pay attention to how things are being handled. First of all, are you expected? You really should be. You have been invited for a job interview. Have they thought about how to make things nice for you, like provided water, coffee, tea for you at the place where you're waiting? If you're sitting in like a reception area and you're waiting to get in, how do they talk to each other? If you can hear some of them talk to each other, like a couple of colleagues, or if someone comes in, what's the atmosphere like? You can read a lot about an organization by observing how they talk to customers and visitors, and also very much how they talk to each other. Thirdly, who are actually sitting in the interview panel? Is there a lot of people present, or is it just the most necessary ones? Now, the reason why I mention this is because some employers are actually not particularly good at hiring people, and they're not used to this. So they just invite everyone, as many people as possible, to sit in the job panel, which is not a good idea at all. The fewer people, the better, to be honest with you. One thing to look out for here is the one obvious person, of course, should be the person this job position refers to, so your potential future boss. Obviously, that is a person you'll be working very closely with, and it's very important to figure out if the match here is right. So obviously that person will normally be there. However, if your boss's boss is there, watch out. There's no need for a boss's boss to be there unless it is because they don't actually trust their own employees to hire new staff members. There's no need for them there, because if they're sitting in, essentially what they're doing is they supervise and they monitor their own staff. And this is a bit of a dangerous one. If you trust people with the responsibility of managing staff, you should also trust them with the responsibility of hiring them. So watch out for who is actually in the panel. Is it a lot of people? Is it the most necessary ones? And who are they? How are they relevant for this position? During the job interview, do they adhere to a standard questions sheet, or do they actually think outside the box? This is quite an interesting one as well. And as you go through more job interviews and you get more experience in doing job interviews, you will get more used to noticing this as well. Are they asking all the standard questions or variations of them while they, note down on their little scoring sheets, or and are the questions variations of expected questions, or are they actually interested in having a conversation with you and to get to know you and to get what you are all about? Of course, they have to make notes. We all do when we're sitting in a panel. But what are they actually making notes about? Is it just about figuring out if you match their scoring sheet? Are they all about scoring you? Or are they actually interested in having a conversation with you and figuring out what you are about? And this leads to the next point. How do they take to questions from you? Usually an interview ends with you being allowed to ask the panel questions. Have they made sure there's time enough for this? Have they reserved time for this? How do they take to them? Is it a bit of an inconvenience that you all of a sudden start to ask questions, or are they actually interested? Usually you'll find that specific educational skills have been stated in the job advert as requirements. But ask them then, what kind of personal skills are they looking for in a person for this position? This is never really defined, and often it turns out to be what determines whether or not you fit in. In other words, how do you like to go about the tasks that we already know you can do? Because you're here already. You have been invited to the job interview. We know you have the relevant education and the training. If you didn't, you wouldn't have been invited to the interview. So what sort of personal skills, behaviors, abilities are they actually looking for here? Now, another thing to look out for is, do they set a test or a challenge or perhaps a second interview? And observe what they ask of you here. Is it either before the interview, perhaps you're asked to do a presentation? Is it during the interview that you have to do some sort of test? I've been asked to do, for example, write an exhibition label or something, and then been given like 10 minutes or something to do it. Or perhaps they do an online test after the interview. The most important thing here is, where are they going with this? A lot of organizations set up presentations just for the fun of it, or tests just for the fun of it, because they have seen it done elsewhere. The most important thing to look out for here is, does it actually tell anything about the candidate that they couldn't have found out already during the first job interview, or just during an interview if they're setting a task or a presentation or something that you have to do? What is a second interview meant to show? What is a test or a presentation meant to show? What are they searching for now that they didn't found out during the first interview? Do they know themselves, actually? Or are they just wasting everybody's time? And I know I sound a bit rough here, but it's unbelievable how many times I've been asked to do a presentation or do some extra work, and you put a lot of time and energy and effort into it, and it doesn't actually show anything in the end. So watch out for this one. Have they changed the requirements suddenly? Somehow between the first and the second interview, are they starting to look for something completely different than they stated in the first interview? Have they suddenly changed course here? watch out for this one and keep in mind what it is they're looking for. After the interview, this is a classic. If they don't say when they will get back, ask them. You have a right to know this. If they don't get back to you with a reply by the time they have said they would, contact them. Write them an email or call them. Do not take no for an answer here. I'm really sorry to say that a lot of employers do not even reply or take the time to call candidates or email them and tell them about the outcome of a job interview, especially in the museum sector. They're either not used to hiring people or they are too used to being able to pick and choose. So they have gotten into this habit of just treating candidates as they like, and you will find a zillion websites and blogs discussing this. It's completely unacceptable. But watch out for this one and contact them if they do not get back to you, because you have spent time, possible money to travel and go to them. You have maybe done a presentation or a test or lots of work you've put into this. So the least they can do is to give a reply. The final thing I want to say is, yes, this sector is incredibly difficult. Keep trying. Never be afraid to let your career take many different turns along the way. The more you see and experience, the more you learn. No one can take that away from you. Be creative with what you can, with your hobbies, your interests, your jobs, your training, your education, your network, people you know. Look at the whole package and show this to employers, because the right employer will notice this. It's not just about whether or not you tick every single box on their question sheet. It's actually about you and what you can contribute with and how you fit into this organization. Now, I know I sound a little tough here, and I'm probably not being kind to a lot of employers. And there are some really, really good organizations out there within the cultural sector as well, who are incredibly human and good and professional about the entire recruitment process. But I have to say there are also a lot who are not. And I think it is a direct consequence of the fact that there are a lot of really good candidates who are often unemployed from time to time and who are constantly looking for jobs. But I think what employers tend to forget is that the entire recruitment process can actually say an awful lot about them as well. And if you are observant as a candidate, you can actually spot this very early on, even before you might take on a job, if you know what to look out for. I hope this gave a tiny idea about some of the hidden clues that you might be able to spot during the recruitment process. You might have done completely different observations yourself. If so, please share them. It would be lovely to know how you go about this and to hear about your experiences.